Thank you for joining us at FTP Sports Games. Welcome to the Sideline Football Computer Game Center instructional video. This video provides instructions for the macro-enabled Excel file that automates sideline football and replaces the play result card deck, the game center chart, and nearly all other charts and pieces associated with the game. The only printed pieces that are needed are the player mats and offensive coordinators cards if you choose one and choose to use it. After reading and becoming familiar with the sideline football game instructions, you will be ready to use the Computer Game Center. When we click on the Computer Game Center, the first thing you'll want to do, if you're playing a new game, is save it under a different file name. That way the original Sideline Football Game Center file stays intact. So as you save it, let's say we're going to play Dallas at the Broncos week 1. Give it a name designation like that. That way, if the power fails or something happens in the middle of the game, if you're saving it fairly often, maybe once or twice a quarter, you at least have a point to return to so you don't have to start over. Save that. The next thing we need to do is import rosters into the game. You do that on the Paste Rosters page, and then you go to one of the roster Excel files that was included in the download of any season that you purchased and go to that individual team. Let's say it's Dallas. So you'd want to copy the highlighted section and starting at the top, paste it over the top of visitor. Do the same thing for the home team. Right click, copy, and paste. So now you've got the rosters loaded into the game so that you can click them from drop-down menus when it comes time to assign statistics, etc. Once we're there, we go to View and click Full Screen. The Computer Game Center is designed to be viewed full screen. And as you scroll up or down, you'll notice that the top is frozen from about the scoreboard down. This allows you to easily maneuver up and down on the page for assigning statistics, etc. When beginning a new game, the next thing after placing the rosters that you need to do is starting on the visitor side. You'll see there's a visitor and a home tab. Starting on the visitor side, you need to determine what the home defense, what their base formation is. All right? So Dallas is visiting Denver. Well, Denver plays in a 3-4 base defense, and they have 3 stars. If they had 1 star, you would just click 1 or 2 or whatever, but they have 3 and they are a 3-4 defense. The next thing you need to do is go down and choose the defensive coordinator. So scroll all the way down. Again, this is the home team's defensive coordinator. If you're choosing for the defensive coordinator to automatically make the calls, and you're going to choose them by mindset. Just like you see on the defensive coordinator cards, this is a very low risk mindset, etc., etc. After reading all the instructions, this will be very clear for you. Under the defensive coordinator card, for it to be an automatic play call, you click on very aggressive, basic, low risk, very low risk. Whatever the mindset of the defensive coordinator, what you want him to have. Let's say Denver chooses an aggressive one. What type of offense is Dallas? Well, usually they're pretty balanced back then, right? With Tony Dorsett and either Danny White or Gary Hogaboom throwing the ball. Once you determine the D coordinator and the offense they're facing, and you click those buttons, you slide back to the top. And you'll notice that you've got 2 options here. Call defense, that's if you want to make the calls yourself between the base, spy, box, or blitz. Alright? So say that the offense, this is their offensive package choices. Base, ace, 3 wide, 4 wide. So let's keep it simple. Let's go base. And then you choose here, click call defense if you want to make the calls. Click defensive coordinator if you want the defensive coordinator that you chose below to make the calls. If you can change this at any time. Say it's 3rd and long and you want a specific call to happen. You would just click call defense, blitz, whatever you want to take place. And then if you want to have the defensive coordinator resume from there, you just click the defensive coordinator button and he takes over from that point forward. Next, you'll see up here that we have the scoreboard with the point total, 0-0 so far. and nothing, no time gone in the first quarter. We're just starting the game. You see the time, the quarter, timeouts by team, and then the field position of the ball, down, distance to go, and what the ball is on, and if they're in the red zone. Say pop forward 30 yards, you see that the team is now in the red zone. Go back, now it's at 30, and you're back at midfield. So just beneath that, we see one of the most fun things about the Sideline Football Computer Game Center. We see the telestrator. The telestrator contains all of the information pertaining to who is on the field, what type of offense is set the offense is currently in, and the defense that matches it. So right now we see that the offense is in a base formation, right? Where you got a fullback, running back, tight end, and the left and right wide receivers. The defense automatically matches that formation with their set. So they're in a base defense. In a 3-4 with the 3 defensive linemen, and sometimes the weak side linebacker, the linebacker level, and then the defensive backfield. Again, that changes depending on what the call is. When you go through when you have a look at the telestrator, you'll see by level that colors can change. When we go through that, anything highlighted in blue in any of these defensive linemen, on a pass play, the player highlighted in blue with an R behind his position, he's the one called upon to rush the passer if that's what the individual player action from the game center called for. Next, we see at this level different colors. The players change colors depending on the play type. When we look at the packages cards included in your game file upon purchase, we see that it looks a lot the same. These are for use. These cards are for use in when you're playing with play result cards and the game charts, etc. Or you use the computer game center to essentially replace that with the telestrator. So when you look down, the key down here tells us what each player, what type of defense they're playing. So when it's shaded in black, that's man defense. If it's in this kind of grayish, bluish, that's zone. And then the burnt orange, that's the safety coverage area, whether there's 1, 2, or none. And then the color-coded blitzers, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And maybe a box safety or a spy quarterback. So when we look back, we see that right now, well, obviously, they're in man or zone. In this case, and each of these players covers a specific area instead of a man. As this changes, let's say we call for a box. Well, that puts the safety down into the box. And that's highlighted in gray, in the strong safety box. Now you'll notice that the free safety is in single safety help coverage area. Again, all of this is explained in great detail in the instructions for sideline football. So again, in this case, the weak side linebacker would provide a pass rush if it was called on in a pass play. Click it again. Now we see a different one. The left defensive end has parentheses around him with a gray backing. That means he's a substitute on the play. The game will take care of automatic substitutes along the defensive line. You can ignore them if you want to, but you'll notice if we click it more, it comes up periodically that player has been subbed out on that play. If it comes up right there, the nose tackle has parentheses around him, that means that the backup nose tackle is substituted in the game, and because he's designated with a blue backing, he's the one providing pass rush if the IPA called for it. On this side of the ball, on the offensive line, or directly behind it, that shows which player is called upon to provide pass blocking if the IPA designated that the offense try and provide pass blocking for the quarterback on a pass play. This would be the fullback or running back if in the game. That's the left guard. Again, the left tackle with a B behind it, highlighted in blue. He's the one that's going to provide pass blocking. The center, etc., etc. Following all rules and instructions and guidelines in the sideline football instructions for what to do in these scenarios. This is just an instructional video on what you see on your screen and how that pertains to the game itself. When a blitz is called, you'll see that the blitzing player is highlighted in red. Let's see if there's more. Occasionally, they'll send more. Go to an aggressive mindset versus pass heavy, and click blitz. If there's more than one blitzer, two players highlighted in red, that means they're blitzing two players. But if the scenario calls for one of the blitzers to try and provide a pass rush, the one with the blitz icon above him, that's the player that is being called on. So again, the Sideline Football Telestrator tells you who is on the field by offensive base package and in what the defense is doing, whether you choose to call or if the defensive coordinator is automatically doing that for you. Alright, so let's go back to base everything. Use the defensive coordinator. This area here, outside seam, inside seam, outside, that is the pass direction, whether it's to the left or the right. Inside left, seam left, outside left. Inside right, seam right, outside right. Again, all of that is explained fully and thoroughly in the game instructions. Along the bottom, we see the running lanes. Dive behind the center, left or right, slam to the left, off tackle, edge, and sweep. Same thing to the right. Say we're in base. The edge run is behind the second tight end. And then the same thing to the right. Slam right, off tackle, edge, sweep. Directly beneath that, we have a pretty important section of the Sideline Football Telestrator. When you choose the game to determine who the workload running back is or the target is on a specific pass play, instead of referring to the play result card to see what that color is to determine who the player is, this tells you right here. Green, blue, yellow, red, and white. Those are all the workload, or in a passing play that changes to target. This here tells you if play action is possible on the play, according to all the rules and procedures outlined. Let's say the team is in 1st and 14, play action is no longer available, so it's not there. That means the play action pass is not available on that play. Next to it, you have a number. In this case, it's a dash, meaning that the team has not bumped up play action levels yet. When they do, that changes to a +1 or a +2 or a +3, depending on the run, how many yards the team has gained on the ground, therefore establishing the run game, really getting the run game going, etc., which starts to add possibilities of moving the safety, and also that the quarterback may, in fact, be able to complete more passes. Next to it, you see what the likely call would be. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the exact call, but what the likely call would be of a defensive coordinator when a team is facing, an offense is facing this down and distance scenario. In the game instructions, it gave you information on the tendencies of an offense by down and distance. That helps the defense determine what their play calling is. This tells you what the normal baseline play call would be of a defensive coordinator, and then depending on what's called, that may be different, whether it's more aggressive or less aggressive. Whatever you see here on the field is the actual play call. Again, offense chooses its formation. The defense changes who's on the field to match it. The defensive call is made, whether a coordinator is choosing it or you choose it, depending on what you're after. Next, as we move over here, this section is very important during the game as well. Here we see what happens at the snap of the ball. Just like on the left and right PRCs, when you read through the instructions, anything that can happen at the snap of the ball is seen there. Whether it's simply a snap, the quarterback is able to draw the defensive offsides, whether a fumbled snap occurs, a fumbled exchange occurs, anything that is possible at the snap of the ball shows up there. As we click through in the Sideline Football Telestrator up here in this blue section, occasionally you will see, there we go, post-play penalty. That means that after all the play is resolved, that there's a post-play penalty, meaning that there's a possible delay of game or unnecessary roughness or pushing and shoving, etc., etc. Other possibilities there are injuries to designate whether an injury happens on a play, or possibly an offense or defense having to burn a timeout. Again, this tells you what happens after a play is completed, moving on to the next play. This section over here for running plays or passing plays or screen plays, that section effectively replaces the sideline football game center, depending on which type of play is called: running plays, options, pass, screen, etc., etc. This section replaces that. Let's start with running plays. Everything that is needed to resolve a run play will take place as soon as you hit the run play button. When you do hit the run play button, you resolve the play as outlined in the instructions in Sideline Football, which always call for you to look on the left and right PRCs to get a couple of numbers there, and then look at the game center chart to determine what happens. Instead, you're looking here. So if the ball is snapped, you look right up there. On this running play, it calls for the linebacker to pursue. You'll notice over here the gray box. That's because the defense called a safety in the box. If the defense calls a safety in the box and this number isn't there, that means the safety got caught up in the wash and wasn't able to influence the play in any manner. So again, this is the individual player action at the start of a running play, just like you see here. Underneath it is the special designations area: stoppers in all of its colors, lead blockers, and the push the pile designation. Right beneath that, we see the number that establishes what the run play level will be. 19 is most likely into the defensive secondary, etc., etc. So let's have a look at this. Say we call a run play, defense is in zone, the IPA calls for the defensive secondary to come up and provide support. So let's say we call the dive left. At the secondary level, the free safety comes up and tries to make a play. This number tells you whether the safety is able to make the play or not, depending upon this number compared to his play run rating. Again, all of that is fully explained in the instructions for Sideline Football. Underneath it, we see that at the same time, a stopper may be involved. So if the yellow stopper is on the field and this number is within his tackle rating, then the stopper is involved on the play as well. The run play level 3, that's probably in the no gain area, right, or potential loss. Again, as you click through, you see that this changes. Lead blocker. If there's a lead blocker in the game and this fits in with his run block level, then he defeats the defensive IPA if one is shown. As we click through, every now and then you will see flag come up. That means that you need to check to see if there's a penalty on that play. So in this case, let's keep going until we see one pop up at the top. Again, this is all random. All right. So on a running play, the IPA calls for the defender at that specific level. Let's say, looks like 17. If you were to look at a player's card, most likely that's in the secondary level. Let's say he ran a dive left. Well, that means the free safety tries to come up and provide a huge hit. Since the flag is shown there, you look to see if this number is also within his penalty range. If it is, there's a flag thrown. If not, there is no penalty. Again, it's just a possibility. If one occurs, this section down here is real handy. Under formation, blocking, cover, the receiver, yards after catch scenarios, tackles, QB pressure, screen passes. You'll see that as I highlight this, offense and defense is listed on both sides. So if the defense were to commit a penalty on a blocking scenario, you click that button and it highlights it. That way you can keep track of penalties as they happen, because more than one penalty is possible on any given play. Once the play is over and you want to wipe it clean, simply click the turf looking area beneath it and it takes that away. Again, all these little flags correspond to the offensive side or the defensive side, and then you can wipe those away. All right, moving down, if you're in a short yardage situation, covered here on the game center chart, instead you look here, and this tells you what the individual player action is for the power play. Options are right below. The read option, and this tells you who's being read. Instead of looking at the play result card to see if it's the defensive lineman or the outside linebacker that's being read, this tells you instead who that player is. And then everything is resolved from there according to the instructions. This over here tells you on a triple option if the quarterback gives or keeps on that first dive. So if you call a triple option, the first option is just a dive up the gut, and this tells you if the quarterback gives the ball on that and then the play just proceeds as normal, or he keeps it and then flows to the edge, and everything else is determined from there. Beneath this here, you see a superstar star has popped up. Again, the game has specific instructions on what to do for superstar defenders, but this tells you if there's going to be one involved in the play. And again, the star designated trumps all other individual player actions and other designations. Forced fumbles. This tells you if a fumble check is required on the play. If it is, you look at this number here. This is a number 1 through 10. These numbers are provided here for quick reference in case you need to grab one. This is a number 1 through 10, 1 through 20, 1 through 100. So you would resolve a fumble check using this number to determine if it fits into the ball carrier's fumble range, and then you're using the run play level if these things are both even or both odd, or if a hit is involved. Remember, fumble scenarios change depending on those numbers and whether a hit is involved or not. So you would follow all rules and instructions as outlined in the Sideline Football Instruction Manual for resolving that. So again, as you click through, you see that pretty soon everything involved in resolving a run play is just taken care of right here. You don't refer to play result cards, and you don't refer to the game center chart. It's all taken care of right here. Let's say, for example, you've got an in-game matchup block. So you're running a dive. So the center and the nose tackle, right, they engage in an in-game blocking matchup. Instead of using the number to the right, there's two numbers down here in case there's one on this side or two in-game matchups that are required to be resolved. So this will tell you, after establishing the new range according to the rules, this will tell you what that number is and if there's also a penalty possibility, which is in that white space there. So again, on all run plays, as soon as you click this run button, it pops up everything that's needed to resolve the play. So let's say, for example, you're using a defensive coordinator, you're in base, and you're using an offensive coordinator, just like this, and you want the offensive coordinator to determine the next play call. Whatever this number is, 1 through 10, and this one, 1 through 20 is, that determines where you're going to look on the offensive player card. So when you look at it, let's see, in just a normal mindset, the number 20 corresponds with the package, and it's 5. So that means the package for the play is going to be base, and the 1 through 10 number is 10, so it's a dive. You follow all the rules pertaining to offensive coordinators, and then once that happens, you determine that it's a dive left, and you hit the run button, and everything takes place from there. The IPA calls, since it's a dive play, the run play level is in the no gain, which is in the defensive and offensive line area. So it calls on the center, because you're running a dive, to provide blocking. He probably will, since that's a pretty low number. Most likely it's not going to be a penalty. And he provided blocking, but it was in the no gain level, so no gain on the play. Again, you follow everything associated with what you see on the telestrator, the snap of the ball, superstars, forced fumbles, and then everything involved in resolving the play as it is seen on your screen in the run play section. Next, let's move to pass plays. Again, as you see, this section replaces the game center chart portion for pass plays. Blocking, pocket / quarterback pressure, cover receiver / read defense, lead or run after the catch, receiver, run after the catch, all of that in that column there that is used to determine what takes place on a passing play happens here. So again, as you read in the instructions, all pass plays start with pass play blocking, and this will tell you who is involved. In an in-game matchup, right, it's the right tackle against the weak side linebacker in a 3-4. You move down to this matchup number, and it tells you if who wins or what happens on the matchup. If pressure is provided, or if the offensive line fails to provide pass blocking, you move to the pocket/quarterback pressure area. And this is the individual player action. So depending on what happened in this matchup, in the pocket/pressure scenario, it calls for the quarterback to try and slide away from the rush. If he does, you simply follow everything as outlined in the instructions for if the quarterback is in an aggressive, normal, or conservative mindset. And then when it comes time to throw a pass, that's down here. So let's say you call a pass play, and we get to a pass block. Let's say the right tackle provides pass blocking. You skip the pressure section, right? You skip the pressure section, and you immediately move down to determine if the receiver is covered, or if the quarterback reads the defense, or if the receiver is able to get open. This calls for the receiver to get open. Let's say we're throwing it to the left wide receiver on an intermediate seam, right? The right tackle provided effective pass blocking, so we skip any pocket pressure. The receiver probably gets open since that's a pretty low number, and once that's established, we move down to the actual throwing of the ball, which is covered in this whole line right here. This number tells you if the pass is going to be complete or not, whether the quarterback throws it, or in this case the receiver gets open and he tries to finish the route with a catch. Remember, on each pass play, or on most pass plays depending on what happened up here, a defender can provide ball in air defense. Whether he's going to try and defend the pass, hit the player, break up the pass, intimidate the player, anything that's possible, as we see here on the left PRCs in these sections, right? Pass broken up, intimidation drop, tipped with a possible interception, a hit that separates the ball from the receiver, etc., etc. That's right here. And this number tells you if the defender is able to do that or not. So on an intermediate inside pass to the left wide receiver, everything, pass blocking is good, the receiver gets open, and now the right inside linebacker, right, because he's responsible for that inside left zone, we see if he has a PBU rating of 2 or not, or a possible interception. And again, all of this changes on each play. Let's say the defense is in man. Well, the telestrator tells us that there's 2 safeties deep. Again, the instructions cover this explicitly, but if everything leading up to the throw of a pass, you have to determine then, because there are 2 safeties deep, if he has a help number. And a 1 most likely will be within, if you're throwing a left intermediate pass to the free safety, a 1 is most likely going to be in his help number. So unless the quarterback manipulates him or moves him with a shoulder shrug or looks away with his eyes, does anything at all to try and move that safety and get him away from that receiver trying to run that route, if he's not able to do that, and this help number, as outlined in the instructions, is within the deep safety, his help number, then he's going to come in and break up that pass. Also, you'll notice here that after pass blocking is provided and a receiver reads the defense, once you move to the pass completed number, it's right here, and this tells you if a pass is actually completed or not. Right above it is the quarterback leads for runs after the catch, or if the receiver tries to run after the catch, that tells you who is involved in that. We see the dreaded dropped pass numbers come up. Remember, when it comes to throwing a pass, there's a few color-coded numbers. 3 is highlighted in blue, meaning the pass can be batted or tipped at the line of scrimmage. 4 and 5 are highlighted in red, meaning that after everything's taken care of and you throw the ball, if a 4 or 5 pops up and this number, 10, down here, 1 through 10, is within that receiver's drop range, and he drops the ball. Everything was perfect, it'll drive you nuts. If this number is 16 or 17, highlighted in green, then a big catch is possible, and a receiver may turn an incompletion into an actual big catch. Let's go through. Maybe it'll pop up pretty quickly, as all of this is random. Again, drop pass. When this number shows up, that means you need to check to see if a hit happens on the quarterback when he throws the ball. So you look at the defender who was called upon. In this case, it's the weak side linebacker. He was called upon to provide a pass rush. After everything is said and done and you throw the pass, if this number, the quarterback hit number, is in that defender's penalty range, then he also hits the quarterback after the pass. You would look at the penalties here under the QB pressure slap, and you see slash sack, and you see that he's committed a personal foul and hitting the quarterback in the face mask on the throw. All right. There's the big catch. that pops up. Possible incompletion. Does the receiver make a big catch? Again, all of this is explained rather explicitly in the instructions. Trying to get a blue number to pop up here. There we go, finally. So whenever thrown ball, whenever this pops up, that means there's a potential batted pass. You look down here. That's the player who's going to try and bat the pass away. Nose tackle in a 3-4, left defensive tackle if it's a 4-3. This is the number to check to see if he's able to do it or not. Each player is rated either nothing or 1 through 10 on batting or tipping a pass into the air. That's pretty low. So maybe the nose tackle is able to bat or tip the ball. And this tells you the scenario. If the ball is tipped into the air, possibly intercepted, knocked out of the quarterback's hand, batted down to the ground, etc. So again, whenever this comes up, before you can determine that a pass is complete, because most likely this is out of any in-ball defense number for most likely middle linebacker or an inside linebacker on an inside intermediate pass. They're in zone, no safeties involved. You go to throw the ball, and again, frustrating. The nose tackle bats it away. All right. Down here on pass plays, this is this is the area that you consult when route changes occur. So going back up here, let's say we're going to throw a pass, and this pass block is above the right tackle's block rating for the play. And let's say the left defensive end comes in and tries to sack or pressure the quarterback, but he only has a sack rating of 1, and 2 is within his pressure throw. So he causes a hurried / pressured throw. This is above his hit number, so he doesn't hit the quarterback. Now the quarterback's under pretty extreme pressure. He's trying to throw a pass. On the reroute, it's going to be directed to the green target, and it's going to be a pressure pass in the seam. And this number tells you if the pass is complete or not. Again, all of this is explained in great detail in the instructions. So as we go through these IPAs, each of them matches a section on the game center chart in the printed version. These icons over here replace things that you see on the play result cards. The check down icon. Anytime the check down F or check down R icon appears, depending on the mindset of the quarterback, whether he's in aggressive, normal, or conservative mindset, then different things apply. The instructions cover that in great detail. This is the pocket check number, and it's associated with receivers or reading defenses or coverage. If the receiver doesn't run a good clearing route, that means that if this pocket check pops up, you use this number to determine where it lands in the quarterback's pocket and scramble ranges. So again, this is pretty low. A quarterback like Robert Griffin III probably going to scramble out of there. He's going to take off on a scramble run. All of that is covered in the instructions. This here is the actual thrown pass line with ball and air defense provided by the man defender or a zone defender, the safety, his ability to help on the play, and the quarterback's ability to move or get the safety out of the play. In zone, that's not even relevant. All right, because on zone plays, safeties cover everything deep, linebackers cover everything, and corners and dime backs and nickel backs cover everything quick to intermediate. This tells you if a pass is complete, if the quarterback has a chance to lead, or if the receiver has a chance to run after the catch. This over here tells you if the quarterback on any route changes, if the quarterback, who he is throwing to, if a star receiver is involved, and everything that changes with that, and then also intentional grounding possibilities, the direction of the route. And this number here tells you, let's say for example, this IP calls for the weak side linebacker to provide pass rush. He does. But in the pressure section, the pocket and pressure section, it called for the quarterback to slide away from the rush. Say it's Ben Roethlisberger. So Big Ben slides away from the rush, because this is most likely in his pocket range. Because Big Ben is usually pretty aggressive in throwing the ball downfield, we also want to check to see, instead of just throwing a pressure pass, if he sees something open further downfield to the green target, who is a star, and then you check the quarterback rating. So 7 is certainly going to be within Big Ben's rating. And instead of throwing a pressure pass that would be for 6 yards down here, you're going to throw it further down the field, right? So he's going to throw a targeted green to the green receiver, a seam, intermediate pass, and then once you throw the ball, everything here applies as it would normal for a pressure pass. If a receiver runs after the catch, those IPAs are here. Juke moves, tackle, spin away. Again, everything that's covered in the instructions for sideline football. That's how you resolve that play. Right underneath, this is the play action number. So anytime you call a play action pass, this is the number you refer to determine if it's in the quarterback's play action rating or not. This number down here is pretty important. Let's say, alright, let's say down here that the right defensive end, let's say we start a play, and the first IPA calls for the right defensive end to try and get a pass rush. Let's say he's weak on the pass rush, he doesn't. So there's no pressure. We skip that, we drop down here, and this IPA then calls for the quarterback to read the defense, but he's not good, he doesn't have a good rating, and 18 is above his quarterback number. If any time this number is above a quarterback's read defense or a receiver's ability to get open, or if a defender is able to cover the receiver, and any time this pocket icon pops up with a number associated with it, you check, just like in the instructions, you check to see if the quarterback is able to survive a pocket check. Now 19 is pretty high. Most likely he's not going to be able to unless you're Dan Marino in 1984, where he hardly ever faced pressure with that great offensive line. And if that's the case, then the quarterback has been sacked. This section down here tells you who the player or players are involved in the sack. So the first thing we do is say it's an intermediate pass. We determine over here that it's a loss of 10 on the sack by quick, intermediate, deep, and screen pass plays. This tells you that how many yards are lost on the play. And over here it tells you if a full sack or a split sack takes place. So, okay, so we flip it over. Let's say it was back to an intermediate pass. It's a loss of 3 on the sack, and it's a split sack. Since the defense isn't blitzing, you're simply going to use the defensive line to determine who was in on the sack. So it calls for the right defensive end. That basically the quarterback isn't able to maneuver or it doesn't move well in the pocket, and he basically lands right in the right defensive end's lap for a sack. Since it's a split sack, this number down here tells you how many places from left to right you count to determine who the other player is in on the sack. So no blitz, it's the defensive line, the right defensive end is in on it, and then you count 2 from left to right, and the weak side linebacker was in zone. He was not involved in pass rush, so it's over here to the left defensive end. So the quarterback wasn't able to make the play, wasn't able to maneuver in the pocket, walks into a sack basically, and then you need to determine who gets credit for that. Blitzers. If it happens to be a blitz on the play and a sack happens because a quarterback isn't able to maneuver in the pocket, this tells you who is involved. If it's blitzers or defensive line and blitzers, if it's split, again, it's going to be blitzers or defensive line and blitzers. Speaking of blitzes, when a blitz is called, just like when you read through the instructions and under blitzes, you do not start by consulting the game center, right? You don't start over here by looking at the pass blocking individual player action. Instead, blitzes have their own start to the play, and that's over here. So say you call a blitz, you look over here in the blitz scenario section to determine what takes place, right? The hot read. If a hot read is available, and it's within the quarterback's hot read range, he throws a hot read pass instead. If it's above his range, then we just look to see who is involved in the blitz. Lineman, that's a defensive lineman. It's the left defensive end, and he receives a bump of 6 to his pressure rating to determine if he's able to apply pass pressure or not. So again, once you add 6, then you go over here and you determine if this number is within his rating or not. You're completely ignoring this. You're simply moving from here. So let's see, blitz pickup. When this occurs, you determine who's involved in the blitz pickup. It highlights the right guard here. He's involved in blocking to try and pick up the blitz. You add 9 to this number and then determine if it's within or above the offensive lineman's rating. This number over here corresponds to the bump a quarterback receives if the defense brings pressure and they're not able to get home and sack or pressure the quarterback. In other words, if they fail to, or if the offense picks up the blitz, then the quarterback, because they've gambled, he gets a boost to his quarterback throw number. And again, it matches just like the packages here when blitzes take place, a bump of 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on how many people are blitzing. You look back here, and the quarterback would get a bump of 3 on blitz plays. So again, pass plays. If it's in base and there's no blitz called, you start here. Snap of the ball, proceeds as normal, nothing takes place, calls for pass blocking. Left tackle, let's say he provides good pass blocking, you skip the pressure, just like that are outlined in the instructions. You go down here, does the quarterback read the defense? Yes or no? In other words, you're basically determining if a player is able to win whatever matchup or win on whatever is required of him to make a play. So the quarterback maybe reads the defense. Does he complete the pass? Is he able to lead? Is the defender able to provide ball in air defense? Is the safety involved? Etc., etc. All of this is taken care of right here. There's no flip of the cards. There's no chart lookups or anything like that. It's pretty easy. Once you click a play, you simply go through all these numbers, and after a few games, it'll start to really speed up for you, and you'll get pretty good at clicking on a play and determining what happens. And it makes play results and finding play results pretty speedy, pretty quick. All right, next we move to screen passes. After going through everything associated with the pass plays, again, running plays are resolved here. Pass plays, once you click the pass play button, it gives you everything you need to resolve the play. And now screen passes. On screen passes, which refer to this section of the Game Center chart, on screen passes, it starts out, after you look at the snap of the ball to see if anything happens there. Jumps offsides, middle linebacker, blitzing linebacker, number 19, probably within a penalty range, so maybe a pre-snap penalty takes place. Whenever a player jumps offsides, if this number is 20, you go ahead and resolve the play as normal because he jumped offsides but didn't do so with a direct path to the quarterback or anything, and it allows you to keep going on the play in case something positive happens for the offense. So up here we start with a screen block. That's the individual player action called on to start the screenplay. And depending on the type of screen pass you called, if it's the center, 5 is probably within a screen blocking, so next you would move to the screenplay pursuit. This calls on a defender to tackle or provide a solid hit on the receiver of the screen pass to see if it ends there. Again, following all rules and instructions for screen passes and the yardage to use, etc., as outlined in the directions. To determine who is pursuing on the play, this section over here, by level, defensive line, linebacker, defensive secondary. That's going to tell you who the pursuing player is, according to the screen pass number. This number is 4, so the drop designation is next to it, right? Meaning that the receiver may, in fact, drop the screen pass. Down here, it's a number 2, so there's a good chance, all right, that the screen pass is dropped. But again, screen block most likely provided. This calls on a player to tackle and provide a solid hit on the receiver of the screen pass. Who is that? Well, we look at this number. 1 through 5, it's the defensive line. If this number is 5 through 15, it's the linebacker level. Sorry, 6 through 15. 1 through 5 is defensive line. 6 through 15 is linebacker. 16 through 20 is the defensive secondary. So this number is 4, which means it's on the defensive line, but instead a color is shown, and that pertains to the blue stopper. Again, as we cycle through these, you see they're listed by defensive line. So it's either the nose tackle or the left defensive tackle, middle linebacker or the right inside linebacker. Red stopper if it calls for the defensive line. This one calls for the linebacker level, right? So it's either going to be the middle linebacker or, in this case, the right inside linebacker, because they're in a 3-4. This one, since it's 16, calls for the free safety to try and provide support if that's what the IPA called for. So again, on a screen pass, the ball is snapped. Screen block. Does the tight end provide screen blocking? Yes, no. This number right here determines if the pass is complete or incomplete. And then this tells you whether there is what type of pursuit takes place on a screen pass. So again, ball snapped, no superstars are involved, and they're not blitzing. So this calls on the nose tackle to try and blow up the screen with the possibility of a penalty. Let's say he does blow up the screen. 18 is pretty high, so it might end up incomplete. Do it again. All right, the screen block matchup between the left tackle and the backup nose tackle. You compare those two numbers and you use this down here to determine if the blocking is provided. One's pretty low, so most likely screen blocking was provided on the play. Is it complete? Yes or no? And then who pursues? It's the strong safety because it's number 17. Is he able to make a tackle with a huge hit? Now, this little icon right here, QB, highlighted in yellow. If that comes up during the play, that means that whoever is highlighted in blue, or if it happens to be a blitz play, whatever defender is ultimately highlighted in that scenario, whether it's defensive lineman or a blitzer, when this icon comes up, you take the pass number and check the penalty against that player to determine if he hits the quarterback. So, and maybe tries to get pressure, he's not able to, and then you would look here on the penalty section under quarterback pressure / sack to see if there's a penalty. In this case, personal foul, face mask, 15 yards, and an automatic first down. All right. We also saw that there was a post-play penalty, and it's delay a game. So after everything is resolved and you move on to the next play, a delay a game might pop up, and if that's the case, you can either choose to burn a timeout or take the delay a game penalty. Fumble number popped up here, and then you would go through the fumble procedure as normal. So again, screen passes, it's pretty simple. One other thing to make note of, if this pops up, if the big loss pops up, and any two things happen in favor of the defense, whether they were able to blow up the screen and also pursue the screen, or if the offense doesn't do its job at all and two things happen in favor of the defense because they didn't provide screen blocking and the ball carrier didn't break through all the chaos around the screen, if this big loss icon pops up, then if the pass is completed, you use this loss number down here because they either didn't block it up well and the ball carrier wasn't able to break through, or the defense blew it up and pursued it well. Either way, whenever that pops up, that means there's going to be a big loss on the play. Whenever a blitz happens on a screen pass, you follow all the exact same procedures at the start of a blitz, and then in the sideline football game instructions, there's a whole layer of instructions for what happens with a screen pass against the blitz. Interceptions. One more note quickly. On interceptions, you use this number as well to determine if it is if after this number, if it's in the quarterback's interception range, following all rules and procedures for that. You use this number down here to determine if it's 1 through 3. And if it is 1 through 3, it'll pop up here in a second, it's highlighted in red. And that lets you know that if this number happens to be in the quarterback's interception range, whether higher depending on what happened or lower, that an interception is actually going to take place. So again, just in review on play calling, if you're using a defensive coordinator or calling your own defense, you choose one of these two buttons. These buttons here put the offense in that package, whether it's base, ace, 3-wide, or 4-wide. You can have other packages as well, following all the guidelines and instructions for like a 5-wide or a full house or whatever, as outlined in the instructions. This tells you who the target is, if play action is available, if they have a play action bump, the likely defensive call, the known down and distance tendency of the offense, and then over here is the snap, everything that's associated with the snap of the ball. And then pass plays, screen plays. As soon as you click this button, everything's going to show up on the screen that you need to have to resolve the play. And then these penalty flags down here are very useful in actually putting a flag on the play if in case more than one pops up during a play. Down here in this section, this contains the yardage, all right, by play. Run on this side, pass on this side. Again, these are simply the red and black numbers that you find on the left and right PRCs. instead of looking at if you're using a running play, instead of looking at the opposite side PRC to see what the yardage bump is in case the running back breaks through a level or a receiver is able to run after the catch, etc., that number is already provided for you in green here. So in short, when the defense makes a stop, it's red. When the offense makes a play, that's the yardage number you use. If the offense makes the play and gains an additional yardage on top of that, that's what the green one is there for. This is power gains, and power either no gains or losses. This is a higher loss number, and this is a lower loss number. Again, all this is explained pretty explicitly in the instructions. And over here, by pass type, screen, quick, intermediate, deep, bomb, and then pressure passes. And then this little letter down here, it's either going to be M, S, or L. That helps you determine how far an intercepted pass travels. So if let's say the quarterback throws an interception on an intermediate pass, the M tells you it's in the middle. This is S for short, M for middle, and L for long. So you would use, in this case, the short number. And if L comes up, you use the long number, depending on the pass route run. All right. Now, when it actually comes to moving the ball on the field, these green numbers in a positive direction and these red numbers in a negative direction will actually move the ball. And then this in the blue area is down, first, second, third, and fourth. You'll notice as you start moving through the different downs, the offensive tendency by down and distance changes. So on 4th and 10, the offense is definitely facing a known passing situation, right? So that changes what the defensive coordinator will do and what offensive play call an offensive coordinator would choose, depending on the actual known situation, whether they have their full playbook at their disposal or if they're facing a known passing situation or a likely run situation. So as you move the ball, let's say there's a gain of 12. You'll see that up here on the to-go section, it changes to orange, which matches the chain markers on the sideline of a game, right? So when that's orange, that means that you've got a first down. You need to go over here and recycle it and click 1st and 10. Gain another 15. That's 1st and 10, and now they're in the red zone. All right, let's say you pick up 13 on the play. Well, now you're down to the 5-yard line. So click first down. As soon as the team enters into a goal-to-go scenario, you slide down here and you'll see these numbers, G1 through G10. Whatever yardage line the goal-to-go situation starts on, just click G5. It changes this to green. You know, most teams actually call the red zone the green zone because that's where the points are scored. You click that to green, and now you're in a goal-to-go situation. All right. As we move down, we see timeouts, visitor timeouts, home timeouts. And then here we see team statistics, where you can start adding these up. Every time a team gets a first down, click that button. When they enter the red zone, click that one. If they get a touchdown or a field goal or a turnover in the red zone, you click those. Third down conversions. Maybe they make a couple, don't get a couple. Now they're 3 for 6 on third down. Fourth down conversions and attempts. Penalties. You can choose yardage, or it has an actual drop-down menu, and you can do that easily. Anytime, when it comes to timing, the yellow second buttons, 10, 20, 30, and 40, move the clock correspondingly. Once you're under 2 minutes and a quarter, you use the black numbers instead. If you want to set the clock to 2 minutes for the 2-minute warning, you can hit that button there. This is turnovers, and this matches the opponent side. So let's say the visiting team makes a turnover. You pop back here and it'll automatically show up. Replay challenges, etc., etc. And then down here, we see points. So let's say the home team scores a touchdown, kicks the extra point. They've got 7 now. Defense adds a field, or the visiting team converts on a field goal. Now it's 7-3. This resets the clock or bumps up a period. So say we make it to the end of the period, go down, keep winding the clock down. Now we're under 2 minutes, so use the black buttons instead. Make it all the way down. The period's over. Hit the period plus, it bumps it to the next quarter, and then reset the clock. Once you reach halftime, hit reset half, and it returns the amount of timeouts to each team. On this side, on the visitor side, you'll also see another section here. At the start of the game, heads or tails, if you want to just scroll down and make a call and then see if it's heads or tails, at the coin flip you can do that, and then this tells you who won the coin flip so that you can keep track of who gets the ball at the start of the second half. Then on the visitor side tab, everything that you enter statistically shows up here so that you have a nice little summary of the game as it happens. First downs, total yards, passing yards, rushing yards, turnovers, sacks, third down efficiency, fourth down efficiency, red zone. It keeps track of total times in the red zone, type of scores, what the percentages are, etc., etc. If you ever need to reset the score because you make a mistake, for example, just hit this button here. Do not enter it manually into any of these areas. To assign statistics, let's say Danny White, since we're on the Cowboys side. Let's say Danny White's the quarterback. Once you start compiling statistics for the game, simply scroll down, and if he completes a pass for 15, give him a pass for 15 yards. Maybe he throws an incompletion, hits another guy for 3. It's Doug Cosby for 22. So Doug Cosby, 22 yards. Maybe Tony Dorsett now gets a couple ball carries. Again, you're just choosing from drop-down menus because you preloaded the rosters at the beginning. 4-yard gain. Hits the outside for 10. 1. Loses 2. Maybe gains 20. Once you move up here, you'll notice now that when play action is available, because Dallas has more than 25 yards, they're in a play action +1. And that continues to go up as yardage is gained. And over here, again, for all, let's see, Danny White, let's say he gets a punt. Instead of using those buttons, you can just simply scroll down 40 yards, maybe the touchback, long, etc., etc. Punt returns, field goal kicks, let's say Raphael Septien makes an extra point, attempts a field goal, etc., etc. Everything that you would normally keep track of on a stat sheet, you can enter it here. Let's say, scroll down, maybe Too Tall Jones and Randy White combine on a sack. Well, you enter both of their statistics there. Maybe Everson Walls picks off a pass, returns it 38 yards for a touchdown. Simply enter everything there, and you'll notice that it shows up here in the box score. So those statistics are placed there, and we're going to talk about that in a little while, how to transfer those to a stat book. So we see Danny White's 3 for 4 for 37 yards, and it provides his quarterback rating for that statistics line. Down here, you've got other events. Oh, and at the end of each quarter, you can come down here and actually place the points by quarter. You'll want to do that for sure to keep track of team statistics. Other events, if there's anything you'd like to write about or describe, you can simply type into these lines, and then if a player gets credit for a safety, then you can add that there. So it's the same for both sides. So assigning statistics, whether it's team, whether it's individual, whatever you want to keep track of during the game. Once a play is made, choose the player. Let's say it's John Elway. Misfires on a pass. All of this is covered and actually replaces everything associated with it. So the game center chart, the play result cards, a score sheet for keeping track of time and statistics and everything else. The next thing we're going to do is have a look at all of the supplemental charts. Each supplemental chart has a tab along the bottom. Penalties, special teams, long gains, turnovers, trick plays, injuries, replay booth, etc. On the penalties tab, you'll notice here that it replaces the penalties chart in the printed form. For offense and defensive penalties, and then by type, pass plays, run plays, screen penalties, You'll see that the offensive side doesn't have a hit penalty section since that pertains solely to defense, and then the different special teams areas, onside kick, field goal kick, etc., etc. And then each of the post-play penalty types, whether it's just a play, score, turnover, or a big hit. And then each subsection, for example, pass plays in the formation or during a regular play if a penalty comes up, blocking, receiver coverage or receiver getting open, quarterback pressures and sacks, etc., both sides. You'll see that a penalty is given. So whenever you're on the game center and you resolve a play and a penalty comes up, you want to flip over real quick to see what that penalty is, then it gives it and lists you for you here, depending on play type. Special teams. Special teams replaces the two special teams charts. We're looking at the historical game side. Remember, there's a projection game side as well if you're playing a projection season. But the historical games, punts and kickoffs, and then punt returns and kick returns, as we see on these charts here. All of that information is contained right here on this page. So as we look at the special teams page, you can hit this button to cycle the numbers at any time. And then on the top, we have here the punt kick section by trajectory and length. The block numbers, they'll be invisible unless they are 36 through 41. And again, that's covered in the instruction section because specific things take place if it happens to be 36 or 41. Like that, block number 38. If you're in maximum rush, that's a block. If a team has a given block rating of 38 to 41, then a punt block takes place there as well. So again, this is the trajectory number and the length number, following all rules in the instructions for sideline football. This popped up, and since it popped up, we might as well talk about it. It's random and it's pretty rare. If you click over to this page for a punt play and the snap over the head pops up, then you need to follow the instructions for everything that takes place if the punt snap happens to be over the head of the punter. Bobbled snap run, bobbled snap pass, those are also possibilities there. Down here in this section, if an injury happens, that you'll see injury highlighted in red pop up there. So again, this is the punt, trajectory and length, if a block takes place, and then these are the punt return numbers. This number is the left PRC number if you're using cards and charts that determines who wins, whether it's a coverage win or a returner win, and then what the yardage is, following all rules and guidelines. This section here looks a lot like the projection side, right? So when you look at the punt returns on the projection side, this chart here for the punt returner win, and then the A18, that's his grade, the B15, etc., all that applies here. So a punt returner with a grade of A, his base number is 18, and so you check the coverage against that and then determine if this number fits within that or not. Now on this side we see the kick. These are for kickoffs and field goal kicks. Again, the trajectory and the length. Block possibilities, and then the kick returns. And then just like for punt returns, we see on the projection side what the grade is for a B, C, or D player. Alright? Up here you'll notice that there's kick / block and then return. Anytime these pop up, there is no check to see if there's a penalty or not. That means a penalty has taken place on the play. And since we're dealing with random numbers here, let's have a look at this. Occasionally muff may show up here. You follow all procedures to find out if a muff happens. You look down here. Is it a fumble or a muff? No. Okay? It could have been. If this said yes, it would have been a fumble or a muff on the play, and then you would have followed all procedures. Over here too, in this section, you could have a shank punt show up as well. So follow all rules and instructions for that. So over here, this is automatically, whenever this is thrown, this is a coverage flag. So you would look down here, and let's say it's a punt coverage, then illegal touching out of bounds, first to touch, 5 yards. So say for example you let the punt roll and that coverage flag popped up and the coverage team actually downed it, then that would be the penalty because the first player to touch the ball actually ran out of bounds. So let's cycle through that. Return flag. So if this happens on a return, penalties are pretty likely on a return play. So say this is a kick return, and you go down here to the kick return. It's holding 10 yards from the spot. So it's after finding out the entire result of the play, this down here tells you how many yards you subtract from wherever the ball ended up, and then you would count the penalty back from there. So again, if a return happens and the return flag pops up, when it's all said and done, you use this number to subtract and then count back from there. This right here tells you if a kick or a block penalty pops up and the pre-snap flag is visible, that means there's a false start. Trajectory. Again, there's special rules if the trajectory on a punt is a 10. All right. So again, you're following all rules and guidelines for what takes place on special teams plays. This gives you the yardage on punt plays. If the coverage team gets the stop, this tells you the total yards. Most likely, it's either going to be nothing gained or a small loss or a very small gain. This one tells you what is added to the returner's base number if the kick coverage team actually gets the stop. And this tells you which returner has returned the ball, if it's a normal kick, and if it's a shorter kick, or another scenario as outlined in the instructions, how many kick returners you count down on the team card to determine who actually returns the ball. If a block takes place, this tells you which long gain grade to use to determine how far a blocked kick or a blocked punt is returned, and if a penalty takes place on that return that would negate a touchdown or anything else. This tells you how far a punt block happens to travel, whether forwards or backwards. This tells you how far a field goal goes, either forwards or backwards. Field goal's tipped, it still may go through the uprights. This tells you if a fumble, if fumble pops up here, this tells you if it happens. So there we go, muff, yes, how many yards back, and then you would go through the procedure from there to determine who recovered the ball, etc. This section here, the maximum rush, punt, and field goal block section, that tells you if you're trying to block a punt, if all numbers are available, just like in the instructions, or if you happen to have the maximum rush on. If this pops up, then you've either roughed or ran into the kicker, unless a block happens because you took the ball. And then it tells you to subtract 7 from the punt returner grade for determining the result. This section, the ice the kicker section, that's kind of fun because if you call a timeout to ice the kicker in an end of game scenario or a clutch scenario, that tells you if there's any bump in his grade or change in his grade. Over here we see the clutch number. Anytime a clutch number pops up or a clutch kick is attempted, again highlighted in all the rules, this is the number that you would use to check for that. And this is the number you would use to check for clutch long kicks. This section right here, this is for the projection seasons. Because field goal kicking is different in projection seasons than in historical seasons, this chart tells you right here what is needed for a kick to be good. And this adds a little extra flavor too. If it's a make, it's right down the middle, miss, wide left, that changes every kick. This section here tells you how many yards are gained on a long or punt return or a long kick return. If a penalty, if on a kick return or a punt return, if a penalty takes place on the return, like we see here, you find out where the returner ended up before the break happens. So whatever his normal return would be without the long return, that's where you would have the penalty start to count back from, and then whatever the penalty ends up being from there. This one's illegal block in the back. So say it was a kickoff return and it's a long kick return. You would take this number and add it to the kick returner's base. Say it's 20, and let's say the ball was kicked to the goal line, and the returner has a base number of 20, and he wins on it, and 15 is within his long return number. So he's returned at 35 yards from the goal line, and then from there a long kick returns for a total yardage. Wherever that takes place and a penalty flag is thrown, you would count back 3 yards down to the 32 and then apply the penalty, so it'd be clear down to the 22. So instead of having a 78-yard kick return, you're at the 22-yard line. Happens all the time. And these penalty designations down here tell you whatever penalties are in case they pop up here on punts or kicks or blocks, etc. Long gains. Every time on offense that a player happens to break through for a long gain, this is the chart that you consult instead of the long gains chart. This tells you the grade and the yards associated with it, what the individual player action is going to be to determine if a break happens, blockers, and who the tacklers are over here, etc. So anytime a break happens, when you read through the instructions, you learn that it's either going to be to the G or H level first. And this tells you if it's H or G. There's G, G, H. All right, and then this tells you down here what the individual player action is going to be to determine if a level bump is added to that original return level of H. So we see here that it's calling for a tackle or a solid hit to be placed. And you go over here, who's the downfield tackler? This says it's in the defensive secondary section. The right cornerback or a nickel cornerback tries to hit and stop the ball carrier there. The result number of 3 is pretty low. Most likely it is within his ranges, and so you would follow all procedures from there. And this tells you if a penalty happens to be possible on the play or not. So let's look through. Let's say that a breakaway happens, and you click to this chart. You'll see that it tells you to look under the G section. So he's already gained 36 yards with a possible bump of 3 more if the ball carrier is able to break away. So if it calls for the ball carrier to use his yak number, and this is within that range, then he gets it. So he started at G. He was able to do it. He adds 3 more. Now he's got 67 yards. And then this up here, this is the fun one. This tells you if a secondary break is possible from there. It's either going to be yes or no, how many levels are bumped, and what the grade requirement is on pro seasons, or the number is on college seasons to determine if a break happens. All right, so let's see. Let's say we have a breakaway, and it says it's at the H level, so 21 yards. There's going to be a level bump of 1, and let's say the safety, because it's calling for support, so the safety on the side of the field where that takes place, that's above his tackle number, so he doesn't make the play. Well, you get a bump of 1 to the G level, but a secondary break is possible if D is within the letter range of the ball carrier. If it is, then you get another 3. So it kind of adds layers to long gains and makes it pretty fun, kind of adds some drama to it, etc., etc. When this calls for a blocker, this tells you who the blocker is. If the ball carrier is the same player as listed here in the blocking section, you just use the opposite. So instead of the right wide receiver, you would use the left wide receiver. If it calls for a tackle or anything else involving a defender, this tells you who that player is. If that's in the defensive secondary color, linebacker, defensive lineman sometimes. Defensive linemen are called upon to make downfield tackles a lot. And then also, colors apply here as well in case it involves a stopper. So again, long gains, what's the first level? G or H. This one's G. This tells you who's going to be involved. It's a tackle or a big hit. It's at the defensive secondary level. It's either the left corner or a dime back if he happens to be in the game. If he doesn't make the tackle, you bump 1. So now you're at F. And then if a secondary break is possible, B. Not a lot of guys have a B set break number, so most likely the play ends there. Turnovers. This replaces the turnovers chart in the printed material. So again, following all rules and instructions for turnovers, this is the grade involved with turnovers, or whether no gain. Again, you can always cycle the numbers. And if you're using historical seasons, you don't have to use any of this over here. All right? Again, this just tells you who, on this side, for projection season, who intercepts a pass, whether a return is possible, and what the fumbled ball scenario is. Whether there's a pile up, whether the defense is able to return it, whether offense is able to advance it, etc., etc. Again, for projection games, if there's a fumble recovery, who is involved in that? This specifies the defensive line level and the right defensive end. On sacks, it could be the sacker or another player. And this here is the comparison between the two teams to determine who recovers the fumble. So when you're playing a historical season, let's say San Francisco has a offensive fumble number of 10 and Denver has a -3, and that's obviously a range of 1 through 7, then this number here tells you who recovers the ball. It would be the offense, and it says offensive advance up here, so not only has the offense recovered the ball, but it over here tells you who that player is, depending on whether it's a sack or a normal play or a downfield play. BC is short for ball carrier. So say it's a normal play, and there's a fumble on the play. The ball carrier picks up the ball, right? Because the offense recovered it. It says the offense advances the ball, and he picks it up and moves it forward another 6 yards. Again, following all rules and procedures outlined in Sideline Football, and also any rules and procedures associated with the league you're playing in. So again, if a fumble, it can't be advanced on 4th down or in the last 2 minutes of a game, etc., etc. And then this is the return automatic touchdown possibility when you're using historical seasons. Trick plays. These are a little bit different than the trick play cards, as you'll see here in the printed section. When you're using this chart and the left and right PRCs, there's a couple of different draws and a series of numbers you need to look at. On the computer game center, this is handled pretty easily. You just look at if you're going to call a non-quarterback pass, so say you're going to do a halfback pass. Depending on the field position that you are currently at, you simply cycle the numbers. This button over here spans the whole length of the trick play tab. So you just look here. If you're from your own goal line to the opponent's 26-yard line, this just tells you if it's successful or not, if anything else is possible on the play, if the pass is complete, and what the yardage is, and if there's a penalty. So here we see that if you're trying it within your opponent's 25-yard line down to the 10, the trick play was unsuccessful and it's intercepted. Follow all procedures from there, and you always use an intermediate pass level to determine what interception level or what the distance of the thrown pass is. Sack with fumble, again, no matter if the trick play is successful or not, this takes over. So anytime something is present there, that is the actual result of the play. Fake punt and field goal runs. If you want to take a chance on a fake punt run or a field goal run, this tells you whether the trick play is successful or whether the defense stops the trick play. And again, this is depending on whether the defending team does not align for a fake or if they're actually expecting a fake. This here, again, when this comes up, that is the actual result of the play. And then this changes whether the defense stops it or whether the trick play is successful. The number of yards gained changes. Onside kick. These are fun. If the receiving team does not expect an onside kick, you use this side. If they are expecting an onside kick, you use this side. So again, you cycle the numbers. This tells you how many yards the kick traveled and whether there's a penalty on the play. If it goes out of bounds, that's obviously a penalty. And then this down here tells you if a return is possible. Every now and then someone takes an onside kickback for a touchdown, etc. And that tells you if a return is possible. The kickoff / punt return reverse. This tells you if it's successful or not and then what to do in each of those scenarios, whether it was successful or unsuccessful. All right, end of game scenarios. If you're going to use a Hail Mary, remember you have to at least have made it to the 45-yard line or closer to try a Hail Mary, and then you just work your way through. Does the quarterback have time to throw? Yes or no. Does the receiver move into position? Yes or no. Is there space to jump? Yes or no. And then what the final result is going to be, whether it's the QB bomb completion or the defender pass broken up number, whatever is required. Right? That's going to be complete most likely, right? The quarterback had time to throw. The receiver moved into position. He had space to jump. It says to use the quarterback bomb completion, and that, unless it's someone who completed a very low percentage of passes during the year, that's a Hail Mary. That's going to work, and the Hail Mary is always for a touchdown. And this tells you whether a penalty is on the play and who the receiver or the defender is involved in the play. End of game laterals, that's just a series of like a chaos type situation where you're trying to link up a series of laterals that has a very low percentage of actually taking place, because you have to be able to get the first lateral, you have to get the second lateral, you have to get the third lateral, and then it's going to tell you what the breakaway is, whether it's a defender tackle, a runner breakaway, etc., etc. This down here tells you who the tackler would be and the level. Third level is the defensive secondary. Second is the linebacker, etc., etc. And all of that is covered in the instructions as well. Flea, flicker, trick play. This is always fun too. Follow all the rules and instructions for it, as outlined in Sideline Football, and then you're basically working your way through to determine what the quality of the fake is. You're comparing that to the quarterback's play action rating, whether the safety bites on it or not, and then this number is added to the quarterback's completion number. It can add quite a lot to it. And then this, if the pass is complete, this tells you whether the receiver has a chance to run with the ball. So that number right there is added to his yak rating, and if that number is added to his yak rating and this number fits within that, then he actually gets to run after the catch, and whether a penalty is involved. Now down here, if the fake is unsuccessful, you immediately move to this to determine what happens after that, whether the QB tries to go through his progressions, meaning a pocket check, or he faces pressure, or they try to pass block, etc., etc. But it's fun. If it works, you can use the flea flicker pass, get some yardage, get a bomb, etc., etc. All right, next we move to the injuries tab. Anytime the game calls for an injury to take place, when the Sideline Football Telestrator instead reads injury, and you slide down here and you see who the player is, whether it's offense, O, or D, defense, and that's the center. And then down here, if you just want a little quick reference, you can look and see real quick if it calls for the player to miss a game, or a play, or a quarter, or whatever. From there, you would click the Injuries tab and look to determine how much time is missed, what the injury is, etc. The injury is something the player, in this case the offensive center, injured toes on his left foot. This tells the type of body, or the side of the body, whether it's the left hand or left thigh or whatever. And on this side, it tells you the body part. If it's a concussion, obviously there's no left or right applying there. And this chart over here tells you and is looked at by games missed for the player. So number of games missed during the season, whether it's a 14-game season or a 16-game season in pro leagues. If he missed 0, then this tells you how much time he's out. If he missed 1 game, then he's out for the rest of the series. If he misses 2 games, in other words, if he played 14 out of the 16 games, it's 1 play. The lower you go, the more chance of missing games. If he does miss games, then you go over here to the category A, B, or C, check it with this chart, A, B, or C, to determine how long he is out. 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 8 weeks, etc. Or you can also add, if the player didn't miss any time, you can also choose to say that he has injured toes for 2 weeks. That makes it kind of fun if you're really into like the accuracy of a historical replay, and you want to keep track of a detailed injury list. And Dwight Stevenson didn't miss any games, but he was injured on a play, and he only missed a play or two, and he carries an injury of something wrong with his left toes for 2 weeks. And then this down here, for maybe league plays or draft leagues or whatever, this is kind of fun too if you want to determine the status of a player returning from injury. Doubtful, probable, questionable, just like you see on reports in newspapers and on TV all the time. Up here, this tells you if an injury happens on a special teams play, again, that'll show up right here in this section. If the red injury shows up there, then it'll either say, when you click to it, it'll either say kick team or return team. In this case, it says it's the special teams player on the kick team. It says to look through your team and find the third tight end, the player that you have as your third tight end, and he's the one that's injured on the play. Again, that'll change from different depth chart positions of wide receivers, maybe corners, safeties, different linebackers, etc., etc. If an injury happens on a special teams play, then it's telling you to go find someone in your pile of cards or whoever you have listed at that position, whether it's a fifth linebacker on the depth chart, whatever, and then that's the player that's injured. So again, a kind of fun to add those things, a little bit of spice to injuries. It tells you what injury type, if you're doing that. Now, if it's in a projection season, you just simply look over here. If a player is injured, and you look over here to determine how long he's injured or how long he's out. Replay booth. Anytime you're playing in a season that actually has video replay, as soon as the play is over, you don't click anything else, and you just click this tab, and it'll tell you if the ruling on the field is confirmed, if the ruling on the field stands because there wasn't enough information to overturn the call, or if the call is actually overturned. So you simply click on this tab, find what the replay booth ruling is, and then proceed from there. The game instructions have a pretty good amount of detail on what to do in case a replay is overturned and what kind of plays are reviewable, etc. Again, we covered this section here for pasting of rosters. And then once you get here on the box score, if you're going to use the statistics suite that's included with a season purchase, well, let's find Dallas's right here. So let's say 1984 statistics Dallas, their team book. All right. So if you're going to paste stats into this, when you go here, Dallas is the visiting team, you copy the visitor team stats. Hit that button, go back to their team sheet, the paste team stats tab, right click, and then hit this button here, the values. It'll show 1, 2, and 3. You always want to just paste values when you're using this, and the numbers will just show up. All right. Once you do that, and you come over here and you add a game played for Dallas, and then whether they win or lost, what kind of streak they're on. Maybe they're on a one-game winning streak, what their home record is. You know, maybe it's 1-0, what they are in the conference, 0-1, whatever. This will start to develop a series of statistics. Whatever it is, we didn't enter much because we didn't do much with the statistics in this game file. But the more that you accumulate, it starts to put all of these into an actual team statistics file. And then once it's open simultaneously with the league or the individual team register, that'll update automatically, and you'll start to have a real good flavor of what's going on statistically in your league. Now for individual players, let's go back here. All you do is click on the button. So we click on Danny White. It's going to copy him. We go back to Dallas under the quarterbacks tab, and again, you right click and you use the numbers and the values. And again, these all come preloaded with a drop-down menu. So Danny White played 1 game, started 1 game. There's his stat line for the year. All right. And then for running backs, go back. Let's say Tony Dorsett. Click on Tony Dorsett. He's the first running back listed. Paste the values. Go down here to Dorsett. Remember to add and click the buttons for games or games started, etc. Same thing for receivers, kickers. Defenders are a little bit different. You don't paste. You look back at the stats here. You don't copy from the defensive stats section. You simply look and see, and then when you go back over to the stats page, let's see, Too Tall Jones, this will be a stat line for the year. So we gave him a half sack for 6 yards. All right. This is sacks, yards, forced fumbles on sacks, interceptions, yards. It'll give you an average, touchdowns on interceptions, fumble recoveries, yards on fumble recovery returns. The average will be automatic, touchdowns, forced fumbles, safeties, etc. And this team code, again, when it's open simultaneously with the individual and team league registers, that'll update automatically. And then this starts to fill out the actual team page so that you can have a quick reference look. You can just look through here quickly and see what Danny White's stats are for the year, his QB rating, Tony Dorsett, yard per game, etc., etc. And then defensive stats stay here. Again, pretty simple. Just make sure you copy and paste each visiting or home team, go through the individual players, start to fill out your stat sheets that way. Again, you're just clicking a button to copy, and then wherever you go, right click, hit the values. Let's go back to quarterbacks. Let's just enter the same stats, that one there, and it starts to add it up. And when you've got 2 games played, 2 games started, etc., etc., it's pretty simple. So again, when you're using the Computer Game Center, you're essentially replacing the play result cards, the Game Center chart, all other auxiliary cards and charts, whether it's package cards that show you who is in pass coverage on specific plays, everything that's in your printed materials that you received upon purchase of the game. The only thing you would need to print is simply the individual teams, obviously, whether you choose to have that in a team sheet or you choose to cut out the individual player cards, and then all you need are the player maps so that you can place them behind them and have unit designations and substitutes, targets for receivers, workloads for running backs, etc. And then offensive coordinator cards if you choose to use one. Other than that, as soon as you have those done and you want to start doing some practice games with the Computer Game Center, it won't take you very long to get a really good flow for what's going on, and the games happen pretty quickly. After you play several games, you can usually get the game time down to about an hour and 20 minutes, depending on what's going on in the game. Now, if you're playing a college game where Oregon is involved and they're running plays every 20 or 30 seconds, it's going to take a little bit longer. In essence, the game is simply determining who's involved on a specific play and whether they win or lose on that. And if they win, then something specific happens. If they lose, another thing happens, and it's simply going through that process, and you're determining results of plays by finding out who's involved, whether they make the play, and all sorts of other things that can happen. So thank you for joining us for the instructional video for the Computer Game Center, and I hope you have a great time playing Sideline Football by FTP Sports Games.